Hey guys! Today I'm bringing you my Vietnam travel tips. If you're new to my channel, recently I was in Vietnam for a whole month and I backpacked my way around, mostly doing budget travel. These are just things that I've learned along the way, but I do not know everything, so disclaimer. Overall, Vietnam is an amazing country, so beautiful, so many things to see. The friendliest people, the tastiest food, a really rich history. If you go, I recommend kind of looking into the history, and it just helps you understand the people more and where they come from and what's going on. Or while you're there, go to some museums and try your best to educate yourself. It's a really easy country to travel, and it has a little bit of everything. There are these quaint old towns, beautiful mountainous villages, there's cities, UNESCO World Heritage Sites, there are beaches, all these kinds of things that you want to see are all in Vietnam. First of all, visa. So it depends what country you're from as to what kind of visa you can get for Vietnam, and if you need to get something in advance or if you can just get it on arrival. Just look up for your country and see what the details are. I'm from the United States, so I'll just tell you what I did. So for the US, technically you're supposed to get a visa before you go to Vietnam. So this means you send in your passport, they put inside your passport an actual visa, and then they send it back. That whole process can take about 2 months. So it's not ideal. What most people do though is actually you can get a thing called a visa approval letter. And this is what I did. You just go online. There's so many websites that do this. I don't know, some of them don't really look legit. I picked one that Lonely Planet recommended, so I don't know, it seemed legit. And it worked. Basically you just go online, you fill in your details. In like a day, they email you this letter, you print it out, and then you bring it with you. And then you have to pay for the visa when you get there. There's $25 US in cash. And you can only use these visa approval letters if you fly into a major airport. If you're doing a border crossing, you're going to need the visa already in your passport. However, it's actually easier to get a visa in your passport if you're already in Southeast Asia. For example, when I was in Cambodia, I made a friend and he got his Vietnam visa in 2 days. So, pretty quick. If you're already in Southeast Asia, you can get it there at the local embassy. Otherwise, the approval letter was very easy. I was reading online that they are trying to switch to an e-visa system. However, when I went, it was not working yet. So it might change in the future. As of now, the letter thing, it seems kind of confusing, but actually it's pretty straightforward. It's just a strange system, but you just go with the flow. As with all travel things, sometimes it can seem intimidating or scary. Just do it one step at a time and you'll be fine. Just be prepared, read stuff online, you'll be good. When you get your visa letter though, make sure it's for the correct dates that you'll be there because you don't want to have any issues. Places. Vietnam is actually a very easy country to travel, I think, because of its shape. It's like a long shape, and so most people are traveling from the north to the south or from the south to the north. And when you meet people, usually they'll ask you, which direction are you traveling, up or down? And it makes it easy because then there's all these like key points you can stop along the way. I personally went from the south to the north just because it worked better with my plans and I got a cheaper flight to go into Ho Chi Minh City. So that's where I started. Most flights are going to be cheapest flying into Ho Chi Minh City in the south or Hanoi in the north. So it makes it easy, one or the other, and then you can go up or down. They are a bit different, and especially because of historical context of Vietnam. I recommend if you can to see both the north and the south. Of course, it depends how much time you have, how many places you can go. So I was there about a month and I went to Ho Chi Minh City, started there, then Hoi An, then Hue, then Phang Nga, then Ninh Binh/Tam Coc, then to Hanoi, then up to Sapa, then Halong Bay, then back to Hanoi. Instead of going back to Hanoi at the end, I could have gone somewhere new, but I liked Hanoi, so I went back there. I thought it was a good amount of time at most places. I have heard that if you don't want to spend the money on Halong Bay, go to Cat Ba Island and just hang out there and do some day trips on boats, and it's much cheaper and it's way more chill. So that's a tip for you. There are a lot of cities to stop in. It just depends kind of what you want to see. If you want to be doing more outdoorsy things, if you want to see nature, if you want to see beaches. There are a lot of beautiful beaches to stop along the way as well. I didn't really stop at those. And of course it depends on the weather. So sometimes in the north, maybe it's cold and a little bit rainy, but in the south, it's a little bit warmer and not rainy. So you might plan where you're going depending on the weather. I always recommend with travel, especially if you have about a month, don't pre-plan anything, just kind of make plans as you go along, because you never know how much you're gonna like something and how much you're gonna wanna stay, or if you don't like something at all and you wanna leave, or if you meet friends and they tell you to go with them to do this, or I don't know. I just think it's better to keep it open-ended, make your plans as you go. But it depends how much time you have. If you have a very short trip, you might want to book some things in advance. The more time you have, the more flexible you can be. So if you don't have very much time, can't be so flexible. Now that you know where you want to go, how will you get around? So again, it really depends on your time limit and your budget. One of the cheapest ways is you could buy a motorcycle or a motorbike and then drive yourself around and sell it at the end before you leave. That would be for the most adventurous people. I am not one of those people. I do not trust myself on a motorbike. The next cheapest is to take buses around, which is mostly what I did. There are public buses that you can take, mostly within cities or kind of shorter distances. But otherwise there are sleeper buses that go, really comfortable buses. You can do overnight buses, day buses. There's so many bus options to wherever you want to go, really. There are trains. They have overnight trains, day trains. I actually never took a train, but they sounded pretty cool. The trains are more expensive than the buses, which is why I never took a train. Vietnam is actually a pretty large country, so sometimes you might want to fly. I did take one flight while I was in Vietnam from Ho Chi Minh City to Da Nang, and it costs about $45, I believe. As a budget traveler, I usually like to spend as cheap as possible on transportation. However, if I took a bus that same distance, it was gonna take like a whole day, like 24 hours or something ridiculous. And the flight was like 1 hour or something. So sometimes you really gotta weigh your options. The cheapest isn't always the best option. To get around, they also have a thing like Uber, but it's on motorbikes. So you can do that kind of thing. There are taxis. Usually I recommend always try to get one with a meter, because otherwise you're gonna have to negotiate a price and it could end up costing a lot more. The best thing I can say is just do a little bit of research first and look online and see about how much it should cost for that trip. And then you can negotiate going in knowing how much it costs. Otherwise, they'll just throw out numbers to you and they'll probably be a lot more than you want to spend. If you're backpacking on a budget, buses are your best bet. No matter where you're staying, usually your accommodation can book your bus to your next place. It's very common. If you go into a hostel or anywhere just walking down the street, there's all these tourist shops that will sell you bus tickets. They usually just have a huge board with all these places listed and all the prices. It's very straightforward. It's pretty cheap. Usually just book through your accommodation. It's really easy that way. They'll come pick you up from your accommodation so you don't have to go anywhere. Sometimes that just means a person will come pick you up and you have to walk to the bus. Maybe they'll pick you up on a motorbike and take you somewhere, because the buses can't always get down these small little alleys sometimes. Traffic. If you've never been to a place like Vietnam before, the first thing you might notice when you get out of the airplane and onto the streets is the traffic. It's so different. If you're from a Western country, it's gonna be just so different than what you're used to. People kind of just go when they want to go and they make it work, and it looks like mayhem, but it's very organized chaos. People drive on the right-hand side of the road. There's tons of motorbikes, and crossing the street can seem very intimidating. Wait for like a good moment, but sometimes there's no like perfect moment. So you kind of just have to start walking out into the street. The main thing that I learned is that you have to just be confident about it. If you start walking out, just continue walking confidently straight forward, because the drivers are very used to this kind of thing. They're used to like weaving around people and other cars and whatever. So as long as you're going in a direct route, they'll see you and they'll stop or they'll go around you. But if you go out into the street and you're like hesitant and you're like and you're kind of like not sure which way you're gonna go, that's when it could be dangerous, because they don't know what you're gonna do and they don't know how to go around you. Just go straight, confident, you'll be good. But look both ways, like always look double, triple, like just be careful. And if you ride a motorbike, be so careful. I've met so many people with injuries from motorbike accidents, travelers, and definitely wear a helmet. But on that note, always make sure you have a travel insurance for anything that does happen. Okay, money. How are you gonna pay for stuff? The local currency in Vietnam is called the dong. At the moment, $1 gets you 22,743 dong. It's kind of fun because you're gonna feel like a millionaire all the time. When you get there and you first go to an ATM, it's really good to know the conversion rate so you know how much money to take out, because you're taking out like 1,000,000 dong and you're like, whoa, that seems like a lot, but really it's not that much. When you're paying for stuff, there's so many zeros on the bills. Just double, triple count the zeros. It's easy to get confused, so just familiarize yourself with the bills and just make sure you know what you're dealing with, because it can definitely get confusing quickly. There are ATMs everywhere. Most of the time you want to have cash, so I recommend using an ATM, getting out cash, and ATMs will usually have the best exchange rates. Some places like hotels, or if you're booking a big tour and it's a lot of money, they'll probably take a credit card, so you don't have to worry, but sometimes there is a 3% transaction fee or something like that, so just double check that and make sure you're getting the best rates. How much do things cost? Well, I was there 26 days. I spent a total of $934.89 to be exact, US dollars. That came out to $36 a day. However, I did spend about $250 on a 2-night, 3-day cruise in Halong Bay. That was a huge splurge for me. I never spend that much on pretty much anything, but it seemed like a once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience, and I wanted to treat myself. And after staying in hostels all the time, sometimes, you know, you just want to feel nice. Let's say you're on a budget and you don't want to spend that amount. Without it, I spent about $28 a day. In general, I'd say for Southeast Asia, about $30 a day is a pretty good rule of thumb. Sometimes it can be more, sometimes it can be less. Again, it really depends what choices you make on transportation and accommodation and any activities that you do. I tend to be pretty cheap in what I do. I usually stay in hostels and dorm rooms. Once in a while, I like to get myself my own room. I always have a little bit extra money though, because you never know what will happen, but that's a good amount to go off of. For accommodations, there are hostels everywhere, or guest houses sometimes they call them, which they're very similar to hostels, but they're like kind of like staying in someone's house. Hostel dorms, I spent anywhere from $5 a night to $12 a night. $12 was like the high end, and it was pretty nice what I got for $12. After staying in hostels a lot, once in a while I like to splurge and get myself my own room. The private rooms I was getting in Vietnam were anywhere from $15 to $22. So not too bad really to get your own room and your own bathroom and all of that for a night or two. I think it's worth it. If you're traveling with someone and you're getting your own room and you're splitting the cost, it actually can be cheaper than a dorm room, so just look into that. The accommodations really range in how nice they are, so it just depends what you're looking for. I always just recommend reading reviews, just noting things like if anyone mentions cleanliness or bugs or noise, anything that might affect you. For food and drink, Vietnam has really delicious food. A lot of noodle soup. They were once occupied by the French, so there is a strong French influence with baguettes. So many tasty fresh baguettes. Most accommodations will serve you breakfast included in your room cost. That's really nice. I love when places do that. It makes it so easy. And the breakfast would be so good, like omelets with a baguette, or maybe pancakes, sometimes a buffet. Really good. Usually coffee or tea. Good stuff. If you're on a budget, it's great because there's so much street food and it's usually all very cheap. You can get $1 banh mi sandwiches. Don't be afraid of the street food. You have to at least try it. Sitting on those little plastic stools on a little tiny table on the street is just one of those experiences that's so good. I will say use your judgment though. Go to places that are busy. Go to the ones that have a lot of people. Go during times when most people eat lunch and dinner, because you want to go and the food is being turned over as quickly as possible, and usually you'll be fine. It's very hot in Vietnam, so you want to stay hydrated. I would not recommend to drink the water from taps though. Just buy bottled water. It's not very expensive. You can buy the huge bottles. Always carry them around with you. That's one of my top tips. There are convenience stores like Circle K's everywhere. Anywhere you want to go, there's always going to be some kind of little corner shop convenience store. So don't worry. Anything you need usually is always within reach. All right, weather. Vietnam is typically warm and humid with rain sometimes, but again, it varies depending where you are. So the north and the south are going to be a little bit different. In general, the north, especially the far mountainous north, is going to be cooler than the south. It's also gonna rain a little bit more in the north than the south. It depends where you are, but in general, I'd say May to October is the rainy season, kind of for overall. So if you're looking to travel around the whole country, November to April / beginning of May is kind of the best, because overall you'll have the best weather for the whole country. Again, you know, it's weather. It can always change though. So I just be prepared for anything. For clothing, just bring layers. It's mostly gonna be hot. Just keep that in mind. You'll be sweating a lot, but there are places to get your laundry done everywhere. Your accommodation will usually do laundry for you. It usually costs about 50 cents to $1 per kg, so it's really not too bad. It's worth it. If you end up not bringing the right kind of stuff or enough clothing, there's always gonna be a place you can buy a cheap tank top or shorts or whatever you might need, or elephant pants. Some places you may go, you might need to cover up your legs or your shoulders, so it's good to have some things that can do that. Or if you go trekking in Sapa or something, you might need some different type of clothing. So just having a variety of clothing layers, always good. For activities, I would recommend don't pre-book too much before you get there. If you want to do a tour, a big activity, something like a cruise on Halong Bay, I'd look around and compare prices at different places. If you're there already, go to a travel agent or your accommodation and see if they can get you deals. They usually can. There's always someone giving a good deal, and if you just take whatever comes to you first, it's probably not going to be the best deal. So I just shop around, compare prices, look on the internet, see what you can find. For anything you book, like tours or anything like that, the more people that you're with, the cheaper you can get it. So that is a problem. If you're a solo traveler, try to meet other people at your hostel that maybe want to do the same thing as you, and then try and book with them. You'll always get a better price if you're more than one person. The people in Vietnam are very friendly. Before I went to Vietnam, some people told me that they had bad experiences with people being rude. No, that was not the case for me at all. I will say sometimes people are just very honest and straightforward, and kind of like how New Yorkers are, but I don't find that rude. I think it's kind of nice because you know where you stand and you know what's happening and no one is being fake. I always felt safe. I never had any issues. There were a couple times when I was in Hanoi where I tried to eat at a local place and they just didn't want to deal with me because I think they're just like, foreigner, we don't care. There are so many tourists there. I kind of understand, like, it would get annoying sometimes dealing with all the tourists. You really have to think about things from their perspective, and I don't know, it didn't bother me because I understand. When you go into another country, you always just have to be extra respectful, and you're going into someone else's territory and, you know, it's their world. You can't expect them to be like bowing down to you. You're just someone that came into their world. I find when you're traveling, if you are nice and polite and respectful, usually that's what you're gonna get back. A lot of how people treat you is gonna be a reflection of how you're treating them. So just remember that always. So these days in Vietnam, pretty much everywhere you go, there will be people who speak English. However, wherever you go, I always recommend knowing the basics of the language of the place you're in. So hello, goodbye, thank you, yes, no, things like that are just really nice to know, and it just shows that you care and you're courteous and you're trying, and most people will then speak to you in English. But it's nice to try and know a few words. Wi-Fi and cell service. SIM cards are super cheap there, so if you have an unlocked phone, it's really easy to get a SIM card. I got one, it was $10 US for 20 gigabytes, which is obscene. It's so ridiculous. I wanted to get less gigabytes, but they were sold out, so I was like, oh, $10 is still really cheap. So, but it's definitely a country that's doable without having a SIM card. There is Wi-Fi everywhere, and it's really fast, really good Wi-Fi. Those are the things that I learned along the way. If you want to see vlogs of my entire trip, they're all up on my channel. I'll link the playlists. If you have any other questions, leave it in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer it. Or if you've been to Vietnam and you have some tips that you want to share, leave it in the comments below as well. Someone else will really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your Vietnam travels. Tweet me pictures and updates. Stay tuned for more videos from me and subscribe for more. And feel free to share this video with anyone that you know is going to Vietnam. Alright, thanks again. Bye.